So, how does an empire that lasts for 3,000 years finally die? Today, we're going to get into the incredible story of ancient Egypt's fall. And it's a tale that isn't just about war, but about this unique cultural power that both saved it and, in the end, failed it. I mean, that is a massive question, right? And for ancient Egypt, the answer isn't as simple as one big final battle. No, it's a much more complicated story. It's about cultural power, it's about assimilation, and ultimately, it's about a collision with a force that was just unstoppable. For centuries, Egypt had this secret weapon, and it was unlike anything else. It wasn't a bigger army or some impenetrable fortress. It was a culture so powerful, so deep, that it could literally conquer its own conquerors. But as we're about to see, even that incredible power had its limits. So to really understand how this ancient superpower finally fell, we're going to walk through its story in 6 key chapters. We'll start with its unique cultural defense, then look at the different invaders, all the way to its final transformation and its timeless legacy. All right, first step, let's get right to the heart of what made Egypt so incredibly resilient, even when it looked weak on the outside. Okay, so picture this. By around 1000 BC, Egypt is in a bit of a political slump. It's vulnerable. Outsiders are starting to move in. But its 3,000-year-old culture, its gods, its art, its entire way of life, that became its ultimate defense. You see, to rule Egypt, you had to become Egyptian. There was no other way. Let's see this whole cultural absorption thing in action. We're going to look at 2 very different groups of invaders who thought they were taking over, but instead kind of got taken over themselves. So first, you had invaders like the Libyans. Now, they adopted the look of the pharaohs, the art, the symbols, but it was all on the surface. They were there for the wealth, and their rule just left Egypt a mess. But then came the Kushites from Nubia down south, and whoa, they were a completely different story. This is how historians often describe the Kushite pharaohs. They weren't just putting on a show. These guys were true believers. They looked at Egypt and thought it had lost its way, and they saw it as their sacred mission to bring back its ancient glory. And their commitment was just profound. They believed a mountain in their own homeland, Jebel Barkal, was the actual birthplace of the great god Amun. So when their king Paye conquered Egypt, he didn't sack the place, he started fixing up the temples. They even created this amazing hybrid art, and get this, they ended up building more pyramids back in Nubia than there were in all of Egypt. They didn't just copy the culture, they fully embraced it and even added to it. But this cultural magic trick didn't work on everyone. The next wave of conquerors, they had absolutely no interest in being charmed by Egyptian traditions. Yeah, the Assyrians and the Persians, they were a totally different breed. They weren't there to restore Egypt. They were there to tack it on to their own growing empires. They didn't want to rule as Egyptians, they wanted to rule over them. Big difference. The Assyrians were basically a war machine. They brought in new military tech, like bronze helmets, things that were totally alien to the Egyptians. And to prove their point, they did the unthinkable. They sacked Thebes, one of Egypt's most sacred cities. This was a shock to the system like nothing before. The Persians, though, they showed an even deeper level of contempt. Their king, Cambyses, didn't just win on the battlefield, he attacked Egypt's soul. He burned the mummy of a pharaoh, basically destroying his afterlife. And then he committed the ultimate act of sacrilege. He publicly stabbed the sacred Apis bull, an animal they worshipped as a living god. The message was brutal, and it was clear. Your gods have no power here. So, after these ruthless invasions, Egypt was just broken and humiliated. That cultural defense, it had totally failed. What Egypt needed was a new kind of ruler, someone who actually understood that to lead this place, you had to respect its ancient power. Alexander shows up in 332 BC after beating the Persians. But here's the thing, he wasn't just a military genius. He was a brilliant politician. He understood Egypt's secret weapon, and he knew exactly how to use it to his advantage. Alexander just played the part perfectly. He gets himself crowned as a traditional pharaoh. He has his Greek name written in hieroglyphs inside the royal cartouche, just like the legendary kings of the past. He even makes this dangerous journey deep into the desert to visit the oracle of Amun, so he could be declared the son of the god himself. He did everything right to win over the Egyptians. all while building Alexandria, a brand new capital that would connect Egypt to his Greek world. After Alexander suddenly dies, his general, Ptolemy, takes over. And this kicks off a dynasty that lasts for 300 years. Now, these rulers, the Ptolemies, they were Greek. They lived in the super cosmopolitan Greek city of Alexandria. But everywhere else in the country, they ruled as proper pharaohs, building these magnificent Egyptian temples and honoring the ancient gods. It was this truly unique, one-of-a-kind hybrid kingdom. But this final, brilliant chapter of a Greek-Egyptian civilization was about to collide with a new global power, one that had a completely different playbook and zero intention of playing by Egypt's old rules. And that power was Rome. Rome didn't come to be seduced. They weren't interested in becoming pharaohs or being called sons of a moon. They came to take Egypt as a province, as a resource. It was going to be the personal breadbasket for their empire. The end came really, really fast. The last pharaoh, Cleopatra, who was a brilliant and ambitious ruler, she tried to play the game by allying herself with powerful Romans like Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. But after a devastating naval loss at the Battle of Actium, her fate and the fate of her kingdom was sealed. With Cleopatra's death on August 31st, 30 BC, the 3,000-year-old cycle of pharaohs ruling Egypt was finally and permanently broken. For the very first time, a conqueror had shown up who simply refused to be conquered back. Rome didn't absorb Egyptian culture. Instead, over the next few centuries, they slowly and methodically took it apart, replacing its traditions, its language, and eventually, even its religion. The ancient world of the pharaohs was over. And so, the 3,000-year story of ancient Egypt as a living, breathing civilization came to an end. Or did it? For centuries, the glories of ancient Egypt just faded away. Its writing was unreadable, its temples were buried under sand. But then, in the 19th century, this wave of rediscovery started. The tombs were opened, the hieroglyphs were finally deciphered, and the culture was reborn. The very same civilization that had mesmerized its ancient conquerors was now captivating the entire planet. So in a way, by leaving behind such an irresistible and timeless story, the ancient Egyptians really did achieve their ultimate goal. They became immortal.